But when you were caught, you had to tell the police who you were, even though you were on the FBI's top 10 list.
I told them. They didn't believe me.
When you were a fugitive, did that list have any bearing on the way you behaved?
My manner of survival, yeah. But to be honest, and I don't mean to insult your intelligence or anything, but I don't think you all catch anybody. Not really. I mean, there are exceptions, certainly, but I think most guys get themselves caught.
Or do you think sometimes they want to get caught?
I never wanted to be caught. I know that's a top-tier theory, but it's more pop psychology crap. No, the truth is that nobody looks at those things. Nobody keeps their eyes peeled all day long looking for somebody that they saw in a most wanted picture. Even cops, they walk around, they don't believe that they're ever going to run into that person. So all you have to do is go about your day. Don't act weird, and everyone thinks you're just a regular guy.
I imagine that's how serial killers get their victims as well.
I imagine it is, too.
You're listening to The Night Before, a movie podcast. Each episode, we find a unique place in the city and share a drink and our thoughts about the movie we watched the night before. This is Lee, and I am joined, as always, by my husband, Jesse. Let's do this.
We're on our back porch.
On the back porch tonight,
We've
by
done,
the fire.
it's late. It's early September. I was going to say late August. It's early September.
It's early September. It's still freaking hot outside.
So hot, but we have some wood to burn. But
Well,
we've
we
done a
have
front
some
porch
wood to burn.
episode.
Now we're doing a back porch.
We're doing a
Back patio.
Back patio. Yeah, we don't have a porch. Oh,
No,
there's
no.
some good crackling.
There's some really good
I
crackling.
might get.
It also keeps the mosquitoes away.
Yeah.
Is what the fire does in Florida. For anyone, listeners that don't live in Florida, what is the purpose of a fire in summer? To keep the mosquitoes away.
Yeah, but we're podcasting at night. It is the night before podcast, but it's the night after.
The night after the night before, but still the night before.
The whole day hasn't passed. And we're sitting outside. So if you're outside talking on your back patio,
It's nice to have a fire. We have a
little
fire
fire helps.
pit, I guess you would say.
we have a little fire pit. You know what's also nice about when you podcast at home with a fire in your back porch, patio?
What?
You can pick your own music.
That's true.
And we have the wonderful
And volume of music.
and volume level, which we have it not too loud. So we have the wonderful Pine Grove playing in the background.
We do.
Personal favorite. I don't know how if it's your personal favorite, but it's a personal favorite of mine.
I enjoy Pine Grove. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I enjoy Pine Grove, especially when we're sitting on our back patio. It's definitely like sitting on your back patio, enjoying a nice IPA.
Yeah, because they have their
Kind of music.
they have their soft moments, but then it gets a little rocking for a second.
Yeah. It's nice.
Cool, a little folky. And speaking of that, we do have a drink today. We are drinking a couple of canned beers we have from Side
Hustle.
Beer
Hilton Head.
Company- Beer Company in Hilton Head.
Hilton Head, South Carolina. It's a teeny tiny place.
It's literally
You
like a side
can't
hustle.
even actually order a beer there. You
It's grab and go.
only can sit there. There's picnic tables. You can buy cans and open up your cans and drink them there.
Okay, I've never been. I wouldn't know.
But you cannot have a draft poured for you there. But it's a fun place.
Yeah, somebody brought some for us.
Mhm.
We had a few left over in the
My
fridge
cousin who
Couple-
lives there.
a couple weeks ago. And so today we've done their IPA, Fractal Haze, I think it was called. And we're going to
Refraction.
Refraction? Refractal Haze will be a good IPA name. if
That
not.
is a good name.
All right, anybody can take that if they want.
There was Refraction, and then there was another one.
So
What was
yeah,
it?
It's gone. I don't know. But we'll finish the night off with Rocket Emoji, which is their double IPA.
Rocket Emoji.
We'll hear that can crack in a little bit.
In a little bit. Hmm.
once we finish
They
off our
kind of
rack.
have like a clean style. Their beers are pretty good.
Yeah, it's good. It's nothing out of the ordinary,
Amazing
but it's really good.
comparatively.
They're solid.
But solid back patio beers.
I have no complaints.
No.
And the rocket, I've had the rocket emoji. This is our last one we have. I've had the other. I really liked it, so that's why we saved it for last.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, told you
So.
the fire went last. So we saw a movie last
Well,
night.
where's the lighter?
Well, I'll try it again while you're chatting.
we'll
so we
try
saw
it.
a movie last
Yes.
night. It's been busy. We haven't seen as many movies,
It's been really busy in our lives
but we saw
lately.
an Elijah Wood film
Mm-hmm.
about Ted Bundy.
Yes.
Speaking of Florida,
No Man of God.
the movie is called No Man of God, directed by
Mm-hmm.
Amber Seeley.
Yep.
So this movie, I wasn't really on my radar, but two things caught my attention. Number one, Elijah Wood, which we'll talk about.
You kept saying this. I know what you're going to say.
What, the way he looks?
You're like, Elijah Wood looks 40. And
He
I'm
looks like a
like,
40-year-old.
he is 40.
Yeah. I think when they filmed the film, he was probably
But he
40.
always looks like a youngster in every movie.
He
Is that a
typically-
word?
yeah,
Youngster?
youngster.
Okay.
He
In
typically
every movie
skews-
we see.
Yeah, he did. Well, he typically skews kind of just like young hipster. Not that he looks like a teenager. He looks like somebody in their late 20s, early 30s always.
Mhm.
Post Lord of the Rings, Hobbit.
Well, like, he looks like early
Characters.
20s, I feel like.
No,
Always.
yeah, but I'm saying even in the movies, he's always a little
Yeah.
hipster, scruffy looking. And this one is
This one, he looks like
FBI
he's 40
FBI agent.
plus.
in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
brown, dark brown suits,
Mm-hmm.
graying hair.
I think that's more real, besides the kind of 70s style haircuts or whatnot. That's more Elijah Wood's real life look.
You mean if he wasn't like a movie star?
No, I mean the age on him. I don't
No, I'm
think
just
he
saying-
was aged for the movie.
No, that's what I'm saying. If he didn't live his sort of, I'm not going to say Elijah Wood has a stylist or anything like that, but he's
He does, because we saw an interview. He's overly styled.
he could have a sense of style because
So,
of his. This kid's been in movies.
I
This
know
guy.
that.
This
I'm
man-
not saying he doesn't have a sense of style, but that interview we saw with him,
I mean,
he
when-
was overly styled.
I know, but when he was 8 years old, he was in Back to the Future 2.
he
Like,
had
he's-
3 layers of
He looked
shirts
good.
on.
but
He
your
was
point
like
is saying-
purposely grunge.
Your point saying if he was like an average,
Too purposely grunge.
if he was just kind of a normal everyday person, he would kind of look like he looked in this movie at this point in his life.
I'm talking about his facial features and
Yeah,
skin.
that's what I'm saying,
Yeah,
his
I'm not talking
hairstyle.
about his clothing.
I don't know though. He could be a hipster. Even if he wasn't a movie star, there's plenty of
And then he
40-year-old
wore
hipsters.
his like beanie, like
You're talking about in the interview.
yeah, semi on, like it was purposely semi, not completely on
But
his
listen,
head.
You and I in
That was
previous
strange. It was
endeavors,
strange. I'm just saying.
we've done film shoots, not like movie shoots. We've done interview things
Mhm.
where we've been on camera and someone's interviewed us. Yeah, and you do your best. You want to look. Not you doll yourself up, but you make yourself look in a way. You present yourself in a way you want to be presented.
True.
And if you're Elijah Wood, he's like, I'm Elijah Wood. I got things I got to do.
That's true.
So anyway, there are two things that brought me to Elijah Wood was the first piece. Anytime I see Elijah Wood, I'm always like, I'm kind of curious because he tends. We talked about this a little bit. Elijah Wood has made the choices he's wanted to make for movies, especially since the Lord of the Rings days.
Mm-hmm.
Like he doesn't do. You don't see in a movie with Elijah Wood, and then you go, "Oh, he's just doing this for the paycheck."
Money. Yeah. No, he does. He specifically picks his projects.
Whatever he's into, like he must be into that thing.
Yeah.
And not everything he does I'm into, but I'm always kind of like, he's consistent. He's like sincere. And,
He doesn't have to just take on roles.
yeah. So anything he
Yeah.
does, I'm like, there's like a thing on Netflix he's in recently, a movie, and I haven't watched it, but It's a long title, but I'm like, oh, that seems very Elijah Wood. It's quirky out there. Not interested. But I'm saying like like something Elijah Wood's in. He's in. So I was intrigued because it was Elijah Wood was popping up on like the Apple TV new movie release rental at home. And then number 2, Ted Bundy. Not that I'm interested in Ted Bundy, but it was focusing more on just the Florida, the final, what Ted Bundy's time in prison,
What's always intriguing.
leading up to his execution.
Well, because you and I both remember that time. I mean, not vividly remember like when he died or what happened or when he was in prison, but we remember like a Ted Bundy time.
I remember Ted Bundy time. I vividly remember hearing them talking on the radio the day Ted Bundy was executed in the
I
electric
do
chair.
not
in
vividly
Florida.
remember that, but I definitely remember the whole like Ted Bundy thing when I was growing up, for sure.
Yeah. So I was intrigued a bit on that element. I could care less. I don't need a Ted Bundy.
I always get him mixed up with the who is the Gainesville murder person?
I don't know.
The Gainesville murder guy who did all those murders in Gainesville around the same time was like a serial killer. I always think that's Ted
Wasn't
Bundy.
John Wayne Gacy, because that was up north.
I have to look it up. Hold on.
Jeffrey Dahmer, I think, but that's not a Gainesville. I'm
Was
thinking
that
of like the serial
Gainesville?
killers. I don't know where Jeffrey Dahmer's from.
Maybe it was Jeffrey Dahmer.
I don't know. But while you're looking that up, what I was saying is the thing I don't care about is I don't need a movie. I don't need a Ted Bundy movie about Ted Bundy going through and doing his murders and getting caught. Like, I don't need that movie.
Right.
I'm really not interested in
Yeah, I
that.
like the take it took for sure.
This movie is just about talking to Ted Bundy in prison. Right? And this was just a movie. This is like a podcast. This is like a true crime podcast movie.
Yeah.
Right? You're not gonna. Do you find your thing?
I found an article about it, but I'm not going to read it right now. I mean, I just can't. I always think like it was in 1990, so that's what I'm thinking of.
Well, that
but
was after.
yeah,
Ted
I
Bundy's
know,
dead
but
after all that.
I know. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, wait, 'cause I know you get.
Go ahead. Obsessed?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm done.
No, I'm saying I didn't need a movie of recounting Ted Bundy's killing spree.
Right. And it wasn't that at all.
No, that's what I said. I said a minute ago this was like a true crime podcast.
Yeah.
This was Edward Norton's character, which is Hagmaier, was his last name, a real FBI agent, right? Sitting down and kind of befriending Ted Bundy. You squint your eye.
Was that his name? That was his character's name, Edward Norton?
Did I say Edward Norton?
Yeah, you did.
Elijah Wood's character.
Yeah.
Was,
Okay.
I'm sorry,
I was
Elijah
wondering
Wood's
where you were
character
pulling Edward Norton from.
was
Okay.
Hagmaier.
Okay. Gotcha.
The FBI agent.
I'm on board now.
I didn't mean to say Edward Norton. Hagmaier is
I'm
a
like,
real
was
life.
Edward Norton in this movie? Okay.
Don't they just, I bet,
No, I understand.
kinda look
There's some
alike.
similarities. Yeah.
No,
there are.
Agent Hagmaier
Yes.
is a real person. And this is based on real things. We even pulled up a photo while we were watching the movie of the actor who played Ted Bundy, which is Luke Kirby, and a picture of Edward
Bundy.
Norton.
Oh.
I said Edward Norton again.
You did.
Jeez Louise. A picture of Elijah Wood.
Yes.
The two of them, and they look like the
They're
real
characters.
life Ted Bundy and the real
They
life
really do. Like,
agent
eerily
Hagmaier.
close. It's like, it has to be why they were picked. Because
Well, it's probably why
so
Luke-
similar.
Luke Kirby was picked.
Yeah.
I think Elijah Wood did a good job of kind of saying, hey, I could be this guy.
I mean, but he looks really.
Because
similar
Elijah Wood is
to
also a producer on this movie I saw. No, but it's the movie is just them. I don't know. I would venture to say 70% of the film, 60% of the film is Elijah Wood and Luke Kirby just sitting in a room talking,
Befriending each other.
right?
I mean, Elijah Wood has an agenda.
Well, he's been tasked by the
He's
FBI.
a profiler, and there's only like
5
or 6 profilers
At the time. It
during the
said
Reagan administration.
this was a new program to profile serial killers.
Which is an amazing job at that time. Like, to have picked to be, what pressure put in that position? You know, I was thinking
not
that when I first heard that.
Not even pressure, but like
Psychological.
impact and stress. And I think that's
Yeah.
part of one of the points of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, what impact does this have on you as a person who is talking hours upon hours talking to a serial killer?
So I think so just to get right down to the point,
Get down to the
some
point.
of the theme of it was to say, like, everyone has these natural tendencies, and it's who can, or I guess Ted Bundy's point he was trying to make to Hagmaier was everyone has these natural tendencies to want to kill and murder, and it's a human tendency.
Well, that was Bundy's character. That was the Bundy's argument, but it also is this the rationalization for the murders, too. Right.
And
like as he's
that,
trying to convince Elijah Wood.
and I know they really fed into that. Like, does everyone have this natural tendency, and is it just that some people conceal this
Act on it.
tendency and some people don't? Like, some people act on it and some people don't. That aspect of it was hard for me to buy into. That kind of like ethical, moral aspect of the movie. There were a lot of things I really liked about the movie. That part of it was really difficult for me to buy into.
I don't think it's funny. I went to bed thinking about the movie, thinking like, what was the point of this film, right? Because part of me feels like this film didn't really have a point, like a message, a meaning, at all. I get that. That was Ted Bundy's point, or the character of Ted Bundy, or Luke Kirby's. You know, I don't. Even though they said at the beginning of the movie this is based on transcripts from their conversations, so I assume that was said by Ted Bundy. I don't know enough, but that was definitely Ted Bundy's characters, or the Ted Bundy argument of, I'm not crazy. They think I'm crazy. I'm not crazy.
Because everyone has these tendencies.
And he talks
and don't you.
to
and
Elijah
trying to
Wood.
convince him that, Elijah Wood, you have these tendencies
And Elijah
too.
Wood said, yeah, I could kill someone. He goes, I know how to cover it up. I know how to do this. But the point is, I wouldn't do it.
And I feel like for Elijah Wood, I mean, you could take it a couple different ways watching the movie, your interpretation of Elijah Wood's response to that. My interpretation was he's just saying that to gain the trust of Ted Bundy. No, he doesn't. He doesn't feel like he could. He's a religious man. He feels, of course, everybody has tendencies that they might think about or fantasize about, not murder, but other things that they don't act on. But I'm thinking he's just playing into it, where I think some of the point of the movie was for the listener or watcher, viewer, to think, oh, well, maybe everyone does have these tendencies. Like, I think it was like to convince the listener, and that was hard for me. I didn't feel like that was a convincing part of the movie.
Yeah, see, I didn't go that route. My thought was, the one thing I thought was fascinating about the movie was this is all about manipulation, right? Ted Bundy's manipulating the FBI agent. The FBI agent is manipulating
Him.
Ted Bundy.
To talk more.
They're playing the sort of cat and mouse.
FBI agent
game.
ultimately wants a confession.
ultimately.
Well, no, he does. By the end, he really wants it, but he just.
I mean, that's not his entire
His goal
point.
wasn't. Yeah, the mission.
His entire goal is to understand the psychology behind serial killers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they can.
But in the end, he really wants a confession.
To better catch future serial killers.
Yeah. But he does want a confession.
It's sort of like it felt at times it had a little bit of Silence of the Lambs vibes, as well. But I feel some of it, because it was so much more like better than some of the Silence of the Lambs, like Jodie Foster, Anthony Hopkins scenes. Just because they kept it going. It wasn't as theatrical as that.
No, it wasn't. Yeah.
So I like the more subtlety of it. And I'll say this too before we go any further. Sometimes we put spoilers at the end of our podcast. This one, I don't think we're going to dance too much around spoilers because it's historical. We know what happens to Ted Bundy
no spoiler,
at the end of this.
There's no spoiler.
It's common knowledge that this isn't like a race.
This isn't a horror movie where like Ted Bundy all of a sudden kills the FBI agent.
Or
like,
it's not a, because there's a theme about getting a stay to his execution.
Yeah,
delay his execution as well. But we know how it ends for
Everybody
him.
knows. I mean, you can Google
And if you don't,
how
it's
that
like, come
ends
on.
up. Yeah.
He is on death row, and I mean that was one of the scenes I liked later on in the movie, when Ted Bundy is freaking out about having to die later.
Even though he's always known he's going to die.
And Elijah Wood's character confronts him. He's like, "You've known you were going to die the second you step foot into this prison."
Yeah.
And your victims, none of them had a moment
To think about it.
to contemplate their death.
And you've contemplated it for years.
And you've only now thought about it in the last few days of your life. And I thought it was something like where the movie also like got really good. Like it took like a more intense where you
More
saw
ethical.
where you saw Elijah Wood's character. To your point earlier about what is happening here, it's where I think Elijah Wood's character dropped the veil. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think he'd been playing a role the entire movie until he confronts Ted Bundy at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like the last time they speak, if I remember correctly. And he kind of just speaks to him honestly, like. But it's almost like a friend. It's like a relationship, because it's like Ted Bundy's like, "Are you mad at me? You're pissed at me? You're upset at me?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm upset at you."
But you have to think, like, people in jail for that long, their idea of trust and relationship is so skewed because they don't have relationships with people anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And even some relationships they have are false. They're through letter writing. They're through false pretenses. So the idea of really trusting someone is really, like, vague,
Yeah, that was like, because you said earlier you thought maybe the point was, could anybody become a killer? And I said I didn't see it that way. I saw it because you and I talked earlier.
I feel like that was one of the avenues they were going. But.
Well, when the movie started, we had a brief little conversation about, could you sit down and talk to a serial killer in a room like that by yourself, right? And you said no, you couldn't.
No, I could not.
And I said, yeah, I could do that. And I felt some of the movie was about connecting with people for whatever your personal agenda is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So Elijah Wood's characters,
he has an
Hagmaier,
agenda.
his agenda was profiling to understand. He wanted to understand the serial killer's mind.
Mm-hmm.
So he would do whatever it takes to talk and connect with this person.
Mm-hmm.
Ted Bundy's lawyer, who talks later in the film about how she loathes Ted Bundy, is willing to defend him and do everything in her power to keep him alive because she doesn't believe in the death penalty.
Isn't it interesting, though, how Ted Bundy has a female lawyer?
Yeah, well, that was part of it. Because
it's
talks
so
about,
interesting to me because he clearly despises females in general. Those
He
are his
doesn't despise.
victims.
He has a violent, sexual violent
yeah
obsession with them.
obsession.
Yeah.
So it's weird to me that he has a female lawyer.
And that's what I'm saying. And she connected with him for her agenda, even though this was a person she loathed. And then even the famous preacher, televangelist preacher who interviews Ted Bundy and is very sympathetic for him on camera and in their conversation,
But he has an agenda as well.
has an agenda too about saving people from the dangers of pornography and violence, right?
True.
But yet on camera to Ted Bundy, he's very sympathetic and caring, but only to get his agenda across.
Yeah.
So I felt that was a little bit more of it, how people use each other or use their social relationships to get to where they want to do, and you kind of manipulate conversations to your advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, and because that's what Bundy was also doing to Elijah Wood in trying to convince him that he's not so bad, that there's not much difference between
They're very similar.
them.
Yeah.
And Elijah Wood never buys it. At the end of it, Elijah Wood looks at him in disgust because Ted Bundy says, "Don't you want to know why I did it?" And Elijah Wood says, "Because you wanted to." Right?
Yeah.
And like, that was it. And there was like a disgust look in his face. Like, there's nothing wrong with you beyond the fact that you chose to do these things. Like, you weren't compelled by anything beyond your control.
Right. Like he just chose to do them.
Yeah, so I like that. And I did like, but I think the other part of it was showing a little bit of the effect of talking to someone who is so vastly, has a different reality than you, that it does impact your thinking.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
it does a little bit where Elijah would, I mean, it's like manipulative editing on the filmmaker part, right? Where Elijah Wood's driving and looking at females differently
Well, I was going to bring that up. Like,
in public.
I don't really know what that was, really. Like, was that Elijah Wood looking at females differently? Or was that, like, in his descent into thinking, like, could I be...
Yeah, could I do that? Or is this how Ted Bundy would look at them and did it? Like, is this what he was
Or
thinking?
is this just a kind of snapshot of women that were victimized? You know what I mean? I kind of felt that. And I really feel the most, I felt like the Elijah Wood looking at women that was very confusing.
There was like
And
three different
I was
women,
like,
3 different times the film
to
did
me
it.
that was confusing because I did not buy, whether it's his character or his whatever, I did not buy that he was looking at them in a
No, that he
sexually
or that he was
violent
ever
way. Compromising their safety.
contemplating
or-
murdering them.
no. I
No,
didn't
no.
buy that.
Yeah, I don't. I didn't
So I
either.
thought, what's the purpose of that? So is it just snapshotting women as victims, women as these are just like everyday women walking along the road that if you were a Ted Bundy, this would be... I liked the artistic nature of how they did that, but I couldn't quite understand what the purpose of it was.
Yeah, I only took 2 purposes. One, just a very broad visualization of the predatory nature of.
Or was it just his process of understanding
Yeah,
Ted Bundy?
that was
like
one part.
with if she puts her hair on the right side or
Mm-hmm.
she flips her hair a certain way, and he is now looking at women and trying to understand how Ted Bundy is looking at
Yeah.
these things. Like he's describing to him like their eyes or their skin color or
Mm-hmm.
their flipping their hair or wearing their hair on the right or the left. Is he now kind of looking at women and trying to understand it through Ted Bundy's eyes? So that's what it was.
Yeah, that's how I took most of it.
Okay.
Because even later in the film, there's a scene which I want to talk about in a minute, where Elijah Wood's even like saying the words that Ted Bundy said.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
That was strange too
it
to
was.
me.
It was. I think it's more of the impact of understanding, and the emotional and psychological weight
strain it takes to
puts on you.
understand someone like Ted Bundy.
Yes, and to have that,
And that really makes more sense.
to
And
have
when you're
a-
watching it, you're kind of like, oh,
and to
I
have
don't
kind of
know.
a connection.
Yeah.
He had a connection with Ted Bundy. Like they joked around about their life. Because you also didn't see the horrors that this person did. You've heard about it, but you didn't witness it firsthand. And the only person you've seen is this person now who's not doing those things, right? You haven't seen that side. But the movie does a number of little subtle mentions of, like the head of the FBI, his boss or whatever, tells him, be careful. He's like your pen pal. You're meeting with him so much. This has a tendency to
Mess you up.
mess you up. So it says that, and then also Ted Bundy and Elijah Wood are talking, and they are both talking about how there's a lot of evil men out there in the world, and so I think that's what I mean. Some of part of it's him getting inside Ted Bundy's head, or Ted Bundy getting inside his head.
And then how they're like relating with each other about their children.
Yeah.
That's really
And there's some parallels, right? Yeah, they both have children. They both are fathers.
And then you're thinking like, Ted Bundy has a daughter.
Yeah. Which that was the weird thing. On a side note,
Like, it's a crazy thing.
they don't, even Elijah Wood's character, like,
They never
he has
show
a wife
the
and
kids.
and kid, but they never show you ever. Even when they show him at his house, he's by himself. But
Well, they don't develop Elijah Wood's character more than like his job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't develop him outside of his job, like his wife or normal life or whatever.
That's what I liked about this movie. It was just, they could have easily gone down the road and did flashbacks into Ted Bundy's life, which they didn't do, which was great. It was, anything you got was just their conversations. They could have gone into like Elijah Wood's world and showing how this kind of impacted him emotionally with his family and made him kind of dark and distant. They didn't do that. They had little subtle things like that he's holding on to his faith, or he's struggling maybe with the cross he hangs from his rearview mirror in his car, and eventually
and he prays a lot before.
He prays sitting at his bed. He kneels at his bed when he gets up in the morning. But even at some point when you're like, oh, he's sort of struggling a bit when he like puts the cross on. So I liked it when it was nothing.
Because he feels like he needs protection from these evil people. I mean, he's talking to every day all these evil thoughts, evil things, evil people. So he puts the cross on as like protection.
But the movie didn't like hit you over the head to go deep with it. It just lets you kind of think like, okay,
he's
hanging
what
on.
he's doing. Yeah.
But it just really focused on just these two. Like I said, I think 60 to 70% of the movie was just the two of them talking in the room. And whenever they left to do other scenes, all I wanted was them to be back in the room talking together.
I felt like it was a lot of talking, and maybe because I was tired when I watched it. I mean, I liked it. There were a lot of things I really liked about it, but it didn't make me tired because it was a lot of just two people talking in a room.
It was a lot of talking.
And there was a good artistic quality about that I appreciate. But at the same time, I felt a little like tiresome with it at times throughout the movie.
Yeah, I could see that. But to me, that almost separated it from all the other serial killer
You're right,
out
for
there.
sure. Definitely.
Like, if you're going to make a Ted Bundy movie, or if you're going to make an FBI agent profiling movie, like every other time folks want to go back and retrace the murders, retrace the investigation. This was none of that.
No.
It was just talking. So I like that. What I also liked was the weird, and maybe this was just to break up the monotony of the conversations, But I liked all of the VHS flashbacks. Like they would cut back to random, almost like music video style of weird random scenes that
From
had
Ted
meanings.
Bundy's childhood and stuff.
Or Elijah Wood's. Remember Elijah Wood has the story about the rat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And one of the quick flashbacks was just a rat crawling real quick. Like it's just
True.
a quick cut on like VHS.
True. That's true.
You're standing up now.
Yes.
You're
I
standing
am.
up on our back patio. So I like that part of it as well.
Yes. I like that.
But I think some of that too, you could say, all the VHS stuff, maybe that was a comment or a way to address, because Ted Bundy often said in the movie that he had a good childhood.
Yeah, he did. And I think that was the purpose of showing a lot of the pictures of like his family and his mom and his dad and
But on the flip
whatnot.
side, Elijah Wood's character said he had not a bad childhood, but not a great childhood. He said his father was a drunk.
So maybe the purpose of that is saying like it's not it's not how your parents raised you doesn't make you a serial killer. It's not having the perfect upbringing doesn't mean you're not going to be a serial killer.
This movie didn't seem concerned with trying to answer the question nature versus nurture.
No, they didn't. It was just like maybe a thought you might have popped up at one or two moments.
Yeah, but it wasn't even trying. That's what I liked about the line when Elijah said, "You did it because you wanted to." It wasn't even interested in answering the question of why did Ted Bundy do these things? Like, what makes him different than normal people?
Well, I think that with that question, it's the whole it's not a nature versus nurture concept. It's a choice. Like you make a choice to act on. Like maybe we do have thoughts, bad thoughts at times about different people. Normal human beings maybe have morbid thoughts at times. But do we act on them? No, you make a choice.
Mhm.
You make a purposeful choice to act on something violent to another human being. Is the point of the movie. I'm not saying that's my
No, yeah.
my thoughts on things. I'm saying I feel like ultimately maybe that's the message of the movie.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Like I said, I felt all of it was kind of just vague. It was almost just like, hey, this is about a time. This is how we developed the profiling program in the FBI. And this was the person who's been deemed, as it tells us at the end of the movie,
I mean, in
been
that,
deemed the greatest profiler ever.
yeah. And that really concept could be really controversial because we could be like, oh, well, people have mental illness and this and that. And
But it explores mental illness a little bit in the fact that
not Dahmer.
Bundy
Bundy.
insists he's not crazy.
He insists he's not crazy.
Elijah Wood's character, Agent Hagmaier, does not believe he's crazy.
Does he ever actually say he doesn't believe he's crazy? I mean, he tells him he doesn't think he's crazy.
No, because if he would have,
But does he?
yes, because they filed a insanity plea at the end to keep him from being electrocuted.
And he didn't. Yeah, he said he's not crazy. He made a choice to do this.
Because he knew that, hey, I'm part of one of the people who spend the most time with him. Is he crazy? Now
Well,
you could argue.
I mean,
Is there something psychologically wrong with him because of his thought process and all this? Maybe.
But
Is this part of his religious conviction, Hagmaier? Because that's part of it, right? Because he says over and over, this is between
you and
Bundy and God. Like this is between him and God now. So is
it some kind of
some
religious?
of it also a religious commentary of like,
I mean, in a sense, what Bundy did is the same thing. I mean, he did rape girls.
Yeah.
But he also killed them. He went farther than rape. So you could say rape is not normally not considered a mental illness. It's a choice that you've acted on that desire to force someone to have sex with you because you don't feel like you can control that urge or whatnot. So how much different is that to go a step further?
Yeah.
For someone who sexually gets off on the murder, not just the rape, but going the step further of murdering, the complete control,
Yeah.
not just the rape, but the complete
I
control.
don't know. I think what I liked about this movie then, with that said, is that it presents a lot of ideas about religion, like moral,
Choice.
one's moral compass, choice,
Yeah.
the death penalty, nature versus nurture, the makings of a serial killer, and it really doesn't lean too heavy on any side of any of the topics.
True. And the death penalty is still like a debated topic.
Mhm.
Do we know how many states still
No.
carry
I
out
mean,
the
I
death
do any
penalty?
research? No. So anyway, I like that part of it.
It's interesting. I would like to know.
And it was
Florida
also,
is one of them, I know.
Yeah, it was also in a time, like we said at the beginning of this, we remember it, that the electric chair was still something used.
Is it not used anymore?
It's now it's like lethal injection and whatnot.
They don't use the electric chair anymore at all.
Old Sparky, as it was called in Florida.
They've retired Old Sparky.
It's considered, I think, cruel and unusual.
Yeah, it is.
Though the term cruel and unusual punishment means the punishment is considered cruel and unusual based on the crime. But you can argue that people argue, right? The death penalty isn't cruel and unusual because they killed somebody.
The people that are getting that have done
It's not cruel.
just
It's not
as
cruel and
bad
unusual.
or
That's
worse
the argument.
things to
But
the
the
people.
thought of the electric chair is inhumane, and then it didn't always work correctly.
But is our criminal justice system based on eye for an eye? Like,
yeah, it's the same thing.
kind
We
of
don't
thing.
use firing squads anymore.
right.
No,
Should
now
our
it's-
justice system be based on eye for an
Yeah.
eye?
Now it's lethal injection. My final thought, because I had two, bringing it back. One thing I also appreciated about the film, I don't know if to say I liked it, but I'm glad Amber Seeley, the director, or whoever wrote this, chose to do. Throughout the movie, Luke Kirby does a great job of being Ted Bundy. So much so that you, like Elijah Wood's character, you don't loathe and detest the Ted Bundy character in this
No,
movie.
you
don't
don't.
feel gross
Disgust.
and uncomfortable.
That's what's
with him.
different about Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
You always feel uncomfortable and kind of detest.
with Anthony Hopkins.
You don't empathize with him in any way.
So throughout most of the movie, yourself and Elijah Wood's character, you're like, this guy's not terrible.
He seems fine.
And maybe
Yeah.
there's some redemptive qualities about him. But then near the end of the movie, they do a scene to remind you just how vile and terrible Ted Bundy is.
When
or
he
was.
describes
He describes in
the
detail
murder.
a
and
murder
rape.
and rape to Elijah Wood's character.
In graphic detail.
Yeah.
And feeling. Like, I think, well, I do have one other thing
So that
to
was
say,
that was a great scene. But I was so happy it was in there to remind you that for the last 90 minutes you have kind of grown attached to this character, and you might even feel sorry for them as they're going towards their death. But you do need to remember who they are. But again, it doesn't tell you you should loathe and hate them. It just says, let's remind you, and you make your call. And that's where also Elijah Wood's character is also reciting some of the same things that Ted Bundy's saying. And I think that's simply just an artistic choice to say, like, the psychological impact of.
He's feeling what he's saying.
Yeah.
And he's so distraught by it, too. Even though
Mm-hmm.
he's saying he's completely distraught by it. He's not. That's the weird thing about him saying the words, because you're like, he's saying the words almost like he's feeling it, too.
Yeah,
But he's feeling it, too, in a completely opposite way.
Yeah, but it's also, he's the profiler. A profiler has to get inside the killer. So you have to
Yeah.
think like the killer and empathize and identify. And at that point, he's done that.
Yeah.
He's there. He sees it. He understands it.
That's what he's been waiting to really
And that's
reveal.
the weight and the burden of being a good profiler is, and to maybe your point, to Ted Bundy's point, you're capable of these same things and thoughts as me.
Just as I am.
You can picture it as I'm describing it to you. You can see yourself there in my place. And so I think that's why Elijah Wood's character had to say that stuff.
So the other really great moment, and I still can't quite figure it out, or maybe it's just as simple as it seems, is I forget what he's describing.
Who's he? Ted Bundy?
Yeah. Oh, it's when the TV evangelist guy is interviewing him. And the blonde woman,
Oh, yeah.
camera woman or whatever,
She's just like she's like an assistant.
whatever. She's an assistant.
She's a production assistant.
But she becomes really like emotionally charged by what she's hearing.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's really symbolic to something in the movie, and I can't quite figure out what the point of it was.
Again, that's what's great about the movie, right? It doesn't. It lets.
I can't figure out if, like, oh, wait a minute, this woman has been sexually demonized in some way. And
Well, I
she is
think-
kind of reliving this.
I think,
Or she's empathizing with his victims. Or you don't know. Like, she's internalizing this and you can physically see it. Or no one else in the room is kind of becoming emotionally involved in this situation, which is really kind of terrible, like what he's talking about.
I think as movie viewers, we're trained to think like, oh, she's like related to a victim, or she has experiences
I didn't
herself.
think that.
No, but you're like, what do they do? Why is the
Oh.
camera like fixating on her?
On her.
Right? And you almost think at any moment she's going to have an outburst or storm out or break down.
Right, or break down
Right.
or something.
And my only thought when I was watching that was, yeah, we're trained to think something's going to happen, right? And she actually does nothing. She just stands there clutching her clipboard.
Well, she cries, but she
But it's
cries
like-
kind of like on her way out.
Yeah, but I think I put it more towards kind of like what I said earlier. Everybody has the thing they're trying to do, right? The agenda they're trying to push forward. And for her, she's a production assistant for a TV evangelist.
Mm-hmm.
And my thought was, she's a very religious individual who has strong convictions, religious convictions, and listening to a man who has murdered and raped people also talk about his obsession with pornography, violent pornography, and that she's in this uncomfortable place.
That's her
Because-
work.
It's her work, but she's moving it forward. This is what she has to endure.
In order to be at her job.
Not her life's mission, what she's passionate about, right? Pushing forward this positive message, because that's what even the preacher said at the end. We're going to save thousands of people's lives once they hear this, right? And that she's doing, quote, like the Lord's work here, but this is her sacrifice. It's like just hard for her.
That was a really powerful
hear.
moment in the movie, I felt like.
mhm.
You know? I mean, they really lingered on it for a while.
Yeah. They did, but it left you as a viewer to make up your own story about her. And
You
you
had
could
to
go different
decide what
ways. Like
that
my
was.
route, I went like, no, this is her like everybody else
I didn't
agenda.
go that route.
Every other person, because I looked in this movie, every single person in this movie had an agenda, and every person's agenda involved Ted Bundy, and they had to associate themselves with this vile person, and she was yet another one. But you could look at it the other way and give her a whole different backstory and motivation.
Yeah, I didn't go in it from your point of view, but
Yeah.
I understand that now. I went into it from a like she's just either been victimized in a certain way or just feels sick or exposed that she's part of this part of glorifying this kind of as an interview in news
Because
media.
the other part I was thinking is, the movie's called No Man of God. Obviously, Ted Bundy's no man of God, but yet every other character, and I lump her in it too, as though she doesn't have one speaking line in the whole movie. Every other person in this movie is a person of God, in their thoughts, right? Even Ted Bundy's lawyer, she has the conviction that murder is murder.
Well, she's very religious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So every other person is a very God-fearing individual. And they're all have different interactions and different interpretations of that with Ted Bundy, who they've all deemed a no man of God, who even there's a scene when he has the Bible in it, and he says, "This does nothing for me," or whatever. "This is no use of me," the Bible, right? So that's also why I lump her into that realm as well, because these are all very religious individuals of different degrees, all surrounding themselves, all being gathered towards this godless source, if you will. So,
I agree.
if you want to kind of think about the title of the film as well.
I think we have sufficiently picked this film apart.
Oh, did we? So,
Yeah.
thoughts? Did you like the movie then? Would you recommend it to folks?
I liked it. It was just hard for me. I can't say I was like pulled in the entire time. Now, I was tired. It was a long week for me personally
Don't tell Elijah, but go on.
at work and just so there's a lot. I had a lot this week. So I was tired by the time we put the movie on, but I wanted to see it. I wanted to start the movie. So it was a hard pull in for me. I mean, it was no drug movie.
There's no what? Oh, no, joke. No, that's another podcast joke.
Right.
But
I would recommend it for sure. Like, I liked it a lot. I liked Elijah Wood's role in it. I liked the kind of questions and curiosities it piques in you when you watch a movie. It's not your normal, average, everyday movie.
Yeah.
So I liked it for that aspect of it. It was a hard, like, I'm a little tired on a Friday night. I'm laying on my couch. Can I be, like, completely intrigued for the whole however many minutes a movie it is? That was a little
it was an hour and
tough.
40 minutes.
Hour and 40 minutes. That was a little tough for me.
I would completely recommend this to anybody who is a fan of Elijah Wood or has a familiarity with Ted Bundy or grew up in Florida in the 1980s and was aware with this. Anybody who likes true crime stuff, I think this is really good stuff. My only regret was I hum and hawed over this film all day on Friday. Like,
That we didn't start
and I
earlier
gotta
in the
sneeze.
day?
I gotta sneeze.
Bless you.
Excuse me. No, it wasn't possible to start early in the day. I hem
we
and
had
hawed
too
over it all day. on whether we should watch it Friday night or not.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't commit to it.
Friday night?
Yes.
But
Or
we watched
Saturday
it last
Saturday
night.
You
Yeah.
said on a Friday
Okay.
night, too. So I was just going with you. I was going on your...
Oh, did I say that?
You said Friday night.
Oh.
So for the sake of
It was Saturday
consistency,
night.
I was just going along with you.
You're going along with my lie?
Yeah. So I was hemming, hawing over it all day Saturday, which makes more sense. Anyway, about what we should watch Saturday night. And I was trying to find something, quote, better. But 10 minutes in, heck, probably 5 minutes in, heck, maybe in the first opening scene, I knew it was a good movie. Like, I knew it was the right choice. And so I think it was a really good movie. So I recommend it for people of any of that stuff.
Okay.
So I'm glad we watched it.
I'm glad we watched it.
I'm curious. As we get to the end of the year, the calendar year, one of our plans is to each share our, like, top 5 or top 10 films we did this year for Night Before. And I mean, I can't remember all the stuff we've talked about. I have to go back and review. But right now, I'm like, this might be a contender. This might be a contender.
I don't think it's going to be for me, but
Move over, Black Bear.
oh my God, Black Bear was so much better. Don't even go there.
Move over,
I have
Black
like a
Bear.
raspy voice right now. Right.
I know.
by
All right,
the
let's
way.
end this. I've finished. We opened. You probably heard it wasn't the fire crackling. We did the
I'm
rocket
not
emoji.
a night person. I get a raspy, tired voice at night.
And we finished that, so we're going to wrap up. Just going to move on from that comment.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, what?
This is good. We can
What
cheer
comment?
our empty glasses. I was trying to wrap the podcast up.
Okay.
We did that. You still have a sip left. I'm done.
Cheers.
Cheers. No spoilers at the end.
No spoilers. Everybody knows how it ends. He dies in the electric chair.
And
I mean, I'm laughing. I shouldn't be. I'm not laughing that he dies in the electric chair. I'm just saying that anyone upset about a spoiler, it would be
Yeah, I know.
laughable.
no, if you lived in Florida at the time, it was a big event.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is a topic for another day. And just
Should we start like a Florida history
the
podcast?
bizarreness of celebrating the death of a person. But you see this all the time. But again, another topic for another time.
Yeah.
People cheering in the streets when a dictator is assassinated. So anyway, No Man of God. Currently available for rental, $7.
We
you
paid
got the
$7
money.
for it.
I think it was fully worth $6.99.
Wow.
It was worth
Wait.
$6.99.
Wow.
I'm not doing my Owen Wilson wow. All right.
I did it.
We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.